Action.
I'm off safe. I'm just getting BTS. Hey? Good. Another take.
BTS.
What happens in the film?
This is just the coin toss at the very
Yeah,
start. That's literally all it is.
Originally, how the film came about, Jack was intending to write and direct a different film with a completely different script and concept that had quite a bigger scale. However, I had planned on going to Europe for 3 months, and I basically said, look, I can't take that amount of time off work at the moment.
I think my initial emotion was probably frustration, my reaction to that, because it was just sort of another mini roadblock in a series of them. I went for a walk or a run or whatever, and I remember kind of going, okay, we'll get over that and let's figure out what we can do instead.
I like the desks. I like that.
Maybe I can't have people for 12, 15 nights. Maybe I could have them for just nights, and maybe I could have them for 3 nights, 4 nights, 5 nights, something like that. And so the task became to try to write something that I thought we could conceivably shoot and produce in that smaller frame of time.
Literally, I think it might have been the next day or 2 days later, he had completely out of nowhere written this new script, which was for the prep room. He came into my bedroom and put the script on top of me while I was still asleep, and it just had a little post-it note on it that said, hey mate, like, give this a read, let me know what you think.
I had the idea rolling around in my head for a while to write something that was essentially like a play, something that is single location more or less, and using that single location to build into the themes of the film. And so I had this idea about, I did debating at high school, we could do a film about debating.
I loved the premise, I loved the themes, I loved everything about it. I thought it was a very, very clever concept for a film that hadn't been done before, and I could definitely see how it could create a very interesting, character-driven feature film.
So that's what she's going to do, and then I want her to look at the poster and look at the photo, and that's when we'll cut over her and we'll follow her head as it turns. Okay? Alrighty, let's go.
A lot of people with the period of time that we had and the budget we had, which I can't stress was, very, very small, would opt to make a short film. If you're trying to make a short film and you're really interested in genre, I totally understand why you'd want to make a 9-minute horror film and put your budget towards your visual effects and your lighting setups and states. And for me, I'm more interested in kind of character-driven, dialogue-driven dramedies, I suppose, black comedies, dramas. And so the uniqueness of the approach, first of all, was just to do the thing and to decide to make a feature. From there, it was fast. The train had well and truly left the station. My next step was to start to bring other people on board who could help make this happen. The most important person being Henry Anderson.
I first met Jack in 2022. Jack was shooting a TV pilot for the Forecast. There was this email that was sent out to the film school because Jack was hired out the soundstage at the film school, asking for people who wanted to camera assist or it be an attachment on the shoot.
A stroke!
I really liked just his energy and his attitude. He worked a long day that day, and I remember just thinking that kid has a lot of ticker as well as a lot of technical nous. He might be, at an appropriate stage in his career where this might be something that is enticing and interesting enough for him to want to do.
I was pretty quick and keen to agree because, those opportunities don't come around. I jumped on as soon as I could.
A friend of ours, Albert Brooks, who I knew was wanting to get into a little bit of production, I said, why don't you come on board and associate produce? You can sort of shadow me.
It sounded like a great idea. I thought I'd definitely go for it. We just went to the cafe and talked all things about the film, where we're going to go from there, casting, what kind of roles he wanted.
From that moment, I was like, okay, I think we can do this, yeah.
We had somewhere in the vicinity of 600 people apply. There's this funny thing where before you before you put out audition notices for things, you kind of negatively self-talk yourself out of it and go, oh, no one's going to want to be in my thing. And then you put it out there and you realise that lots of people want to be in things, and to them it's not your thing, it's just a thing. Your ego is not as attached to it for them as it is for you. What you find is particularly if you have any kind of runs on the board at all, with the smallest possible projects, and you are professional and well-intentioned and organised, people will come, and you then have to do the work, which Albert was a big help in sifting through the massive talent there, and there's a lot of it, and figuring out who's the right fit, doing callback auditions and whatnot, and sending out script excerpts. And we did all that, and we found our cast within a couple of weeks. There were 2 roles written for people, or people who I had in mind who I was hoping would be able to do it. One is obviously TK, who plays Hamish, and the other role was Annie, who's played by Amy Blanc. I'd worked with Amy on a play that I wrote called Unperturbed in 2022 and 23 in Adelaide and Sydney.
I'm so tired from frying barramundi. Please just chip in around.
He just sent me a message and said that he'd written this film and asked if I'd wanted to come on board. He could rewrite the phone book and I would probably do that, so obviously I was excited.
I just think she's such a consummate professional. You give her a page of dialogue or 10, 20 pages and she'll come back the next day and just knows it beat for beat. Yeah, just a really keen, very talented actor who, once people find out how good she is, she won't be quite as available. We had Jemima Hartley play Katie.
I saw a casting notice online, and so I googled Jack, as you do, and watched some of his previous work, and I was like, oh, I like this. And so I did the sneaky thing that you're not actually really supposed to do, but I found his email in a very legal way. It was on his website, and emailed him. I did a tape and I emailed it to him and said, hello, I'd love to do this. And he came back after a couple of days and then said, okay, you need to send me another tape, by tonight. It was really, really quick. So I did it, and then he emailed me and he told me I got it.
Because when I wrote this bit, he wasn't being the Raven, but Jasper also wasn't Raven at that point. So a lot has changed. So much.
It's not my fault you threw it out the fucking window.
I found the role through Star Now, actually. And it was one of those ones that you're just sort of scrolling through and you see something that it doesn't necessarily jump out at you as some kind of enormous project at first, but you can also sort of see that there's an interesting premise, right? And really, when I looked at the script, the person that I was auditioning for was actually Lyndon, because that character has a lot of, I think, muscularity involved with the way that they sort of approach the world. And the way that they sort of view that lens. So that was my initial audition piece, actually. And I had a lot of fun with it.
I found out from Amy first. It was by accident. I was texting Amy, I'm like, do you think I got it? And she was like, yeah, it's you've been booked. I was like, what? And then I found a day later I've been booked by Jack. So I was at the time still studying at JMC. It was really cool to still be studying and then also okay, I got this gig lined up, which is really, really, really helpful.
Richard had his time. He had all the time he got. That is all there is.
Yeah, cut. Good boy.
Okay, on to Freon.
When my mum told me that I got a role, because I wanted to be do some acting, she said that I got a role with Jack, and that I'll be acting as this shy kid. And I was like, I'm not that shy, but I was nervous about doing it, but once I got to do the acting, it was pretty cool. I actually liked it.
And Brendan Miles, who plays the teacher, who I had worked with previously, again on that same television pilot. By the time we'd found our actors, it was 3 weeks until production. We were putting the crew together still, and we organised a table read with the cast, 2 weeks till production. We had rehearsals with the cast, 1 week till production, and then we started and we shot across 5 nights, a Monday night to a Friday night.
Going in and planning out all the shots and lighting maps and stuff like that. It was going to be, shot in 5 nights. So we had to basically set and forget and trying to change exposure levels for different framings and stuff, because we didn't really bump in a key light or bounces or anything or negative fill for a lot of the shots. There were probably 1 or 2 that we did that really needed it. I was pulling focus and trying to think of what the next shot is and organize all of these different things in my head. Are we getting the emotion of that scene very well? Is that person lit well? Which would be conversations that you'd have to have if you had more time. But they were just conversations that we didn't have time for. It was super collaborative in the sense that Jack was able and willing to have enough of his foundational ideas in the scenes and in different parts of the film where there were like sprinkles and stuff that other people could layer in on top. So sound design and different shots and art department things, which worked really well.
Doing and so why we're doing it, just so we're all on the same page about what the objective here is and stuff. The dialogue is pretty much the dialogue. We will have a little bit of space for a bit of play in the room, maybe. Particularly the linking lines at the bottom of one scene and the top of another. They obviously need to be what they are for continuity. So just really knowing the material is going to be really, really important for this because we just don't have the luxury of loads of time to muck around. Any questions before we read? No?
I was a little bit nervous rocking up to that table read. I knew that I was capable of reading a script and all of that sort of stuff as well, but you're walking into a room full of, other actors who've also auditioned and then have been cast based on their merit.
Well, I thought it was really funny from the beginning. At the table read, I think that really helped it come alive a bit more because, you hear people say lines differently to how I said them in my head. And I'm like, well, actually, that makes more sense, and then the whole thing just came together a lot more.
Impressed by how intellectual the actual writing was. The dialogue does carry the film, and I think it's like a really beautiful piece of literature just as a script.
It's really interesting, just seeing characters come to life in the flesh, having just been concepts a week before.
Once you could sort of put a face to a character, you went, oh yeah, of course they're that character. Like Amy, I was like, oh, of course she's Annie. Like, it just made so much sense.
I think Jemima was perfect, and Josiah was just unbelievably perfect. I mean, what a find he was, seriously. I think that room was exactly what I read off the script, but coming in to see who I was going to be working with Brayden and Finn, they were very different to how I imagined the characters, but really bringing them to life now, I can't really picture them being anybody else. I think there was a lightness in Finn that came to Lyndon that wasn't written in the script, and kind of probably with Brayden just an energy, kind of craziness almost to Jasper that wasn't there.
And it was funny, I think, in the table read, my first read, I hadn't read it as so funny, and then there were little moments where you'd say a line that you hadn't thought was funny, and then everyone would laugh, and you go, oh yeah, that's funny.
And everyone was just ripping off the page. And I was like, okay, I'm at the bottom of the food chain here. The cast is they're so well skilled. When you surround yourself with people like that, that's the playing field you're in.
It was encouraging. There wasn't a lick of judgment in there either. You know what I mean? It was very clear that everyone was in there to do a job, have fun doing the job. You know what I mean? Interrogate the piece for what it was and see what we can do with it. I
like the fact that coming into that table read, you noticed there were a lot of different just personalities, and that made everything just a lot more fun from the get-go. From that day onwards, really, we knew that it was going to be a really good project because everyone just seemed really good and to gel with each other well.
Okay, there's something in there. Let's try it again. Lyndon, give him time to start rearranging things maniacally, and let's let that breathe for 10 seconds.
The production was very streamlined, very planned, and we didn't leave too much to chance. And a lot of that came the week earlier when we had rehearsals at the new theatre in Newtown.
That was really helpful. I think because quite often with film you don't get a rehearsal period. But because we shot the whole film in 5 nights, I think without that we would have been really lost.
They were really necessary because we were doing everything in such a fast confinement. We needed that blocking because we weren't going to get the time to do it on set. And it also gave us a chance to build some chemistry with each other.
In terms of building a character, I would say that it's quintessential, right? You can't do without that kind of development period. I wish I was the kind of person that could rock up to a set chewing gum and go, yeah, all right, let's do it. But I can't, and not a lot of people can do that. And if you think you can do that, then, good for you, I guess. But getting in there and practicing it and building a character, getting that nervous energy and, the glasses and the tie, and you have to spend the time doing that so that you're not trying to invent it on the camera on set during the shoot.
Literally
from there, back around your desk, all the way up to here. Like, it's so drawn out in a sort of a taunting way that she knows you're coming towards her, but you're taking a stupid amount of time to get there. Like, something like that. Yes, with a little bit.
And I think there are moments of the film that are it's like almost very choreographed as well. Like, because we are in that one building. The boys come into our room, but like, we're in that one room the whole time. So you really want to like maximize the space, because that's what you would do if you were stuck in a room. You would open all the cupboards and you would explore, and you'd walk up and down the desks every single way. So it was fun to like play around and figure that out in rehearsals as well.
She's getting, in that take there, she got to the desk too soon. So does the walk need to be slower, or does she need to leave later? Perhaps the walk is slower.
Slower, but yeah. I think there's room for her to do some more stuff along the way.
For me, it was like, I don't know what I was doing. Because I seen the Jemima and that. Yeah, when they were acting, I was like, damn, they look like really good actors. And I don't know if I was going to be like that as well. And like, even just like looking at the lines, I don't know if I was going to remember it, but...
I think the thing that sort of was really interesting for me during that rehearsal process too was that like both sides of the cast were split. You know, we hadn't really, like, we met them at the table read and sort of got a bit of a gist for who they were and whatnot, but otherwise, no idea really what's going on in that other room aside from what's written in the script. And the script can only tell you so much, because the magic of filmmaking is that you get into the room and you discover things. And so I was also filled with just enormous curiosity as to how that was going to come out and what the two halves were going to look like once they had been married.
You know, my expectation was that we were going to move fast and that everyone needed to be on board with that, and there needed to be a sense of personal responsibility in that when a note was given, whether it was delivery, style, introspection of a character, or blocking, that it was that character and that actor's responsibility to remember that.
Annie's actually quite similar to who I was at her age. She cares a lot and wants to do a good job, you know. And I care a lot and want to do a good job, and I don't think there's anything wrong with that. Yeah, you know, everything's a big deal in the way that everything's a big deal when you're that age. And debating is very serious stuff.
I think Hamish is definitely an interesting character, but I don't think I see any of myself in him, really. I actually believe Jack's based Hamish off himself, in a way. I think a lot of that kind of arrogant, intelligent third speaker type of thing is, I think, slightly based around himself and the role he played in debating. But I think the, you know, hyper privileged kind of xenophobic elements of Hamish are completely fictional. None of that I don't think is in Jack's persona or mine, for that matter.
In the rehearsal process, it was really good. I worked pretty closely with Jack in creating a character. I think I had probably like the most separate time in creating Lyndon, because he is very, especially to the other characters in the script, he is this funny specimen of a human. He's very, very unique. So I think we worked a lot on movement and eyes. I remember Jack sent me a lot of resources to study, some old film of eye acting, and this sort of very like this dardiness, this very quick thinking kind of character, which I took like heavy inspiration from. But yeah, movement was huge.
I think it was challenging. Like, Katie is such a complex character, and I think what I kind of figured out was that even when I keep on saying she's really mean, she is really nice as well. When she's being really mean, it's often that she's actually just trying to connect with someone. She does it in a really bad way, but she kind of doesn't have anyone else that she can talk to. And so when she is being really snarky or really insulting or like just not very nice, that's kind of the only way that she feels safe to connect with someone without letting any of her vulnerabilities out, because that makes her feel weak. And I think over the course of the film, she realizes that she can let people see her.
I'm playing someone from private school. I never went to a private school. You know, I went to a public school. I went to not very well off public school, actually. And so to have that kind of background in the way that I was acting, it was difficult to reconcile those things in the beginning. There's a line in the film that helped me a lot. Jasper says,
That is in that wish-wash you're peddling. Smart people go to public schools too.
smart people go to public schools too. And, you know, it's brushed off by the other characters and whatnot, but for me, as the actor, as the person who comes from that sort of cultural context, that was an important line for me and ended up informing my character for the rest of the piece. I played the character as if I had received a scholarship from a lower end school, but that had been kept secret. And so to inform that line with that kind of, you know, context was something that I felt very passionate about. And particularly as well, the script itself goes to great lengths and great efforts to draw the line between these two worlds and to show you the difference between them. And it's not just in the writing, it's not just in the way that the actors approach the scene, it's also in the way that the scenes are edited, it's also in the lighting, it's also in the filters that you see over the actual camera shots and whatnot as well in post. And I think that paying attention to that disparity is something that's really important, not just for art and entertainment and for comedy, but generally speaking as an honest way of taking stock of the kind of education dichotomies that we have. You know what I mean?
And it was really interesting to see a sort of humorous take on that of an all-boys private school versus the public school with the two girls, but also to see how, as you see, we'll see at the end of the film, how it all comes together and how no matter what your background was, you're all kind of similar in a way.
It was a good natural progression, I think, from table read rehearsals and then actually doing the thing.
Come on.
I wanted the differences in the rooms to be built into the photography of the film.
Jack and I did a location scout together where we went through a bunch of the different rooms in the actual school. In pre-production, we talked about really trying to lock in colour with both of the schools. So with the private school boys, we wanted to have really strong tones of blue. And with the public school, we wanted to have stronger tones of green and that earthiness. And having like a newer style for the private schools, but in the old grungy side, we had the public school. The floorboards were creaking, which actually ended up being annoying because we had to get a bunch of ADR because people had walking and talking shots. Private school room was a little bit echoey as well. So obviously they weren't ideal in the sense, but they worked really well visually.
That was the idea, is that the boys would be blues and whites and the public school room would be browns and greens and yellows, and we were looking to show that split, to show that difference, so that it wasn't all on the script or the characters, and it was there for you to see in plain sight the differences between these two. And of course, there is a notion throughout the film that actually they're not as dissimilar as they might seem, and so we all end up in the same room at the end.
And then you just lower the exposure all the way down, and then in post you can use the lowest exposure of the floor.
When we were doing the poster shot, it was a tricky lighting situation. It was in a dark kind of school hall, and the inbuilt lights in there, you know, fluorescent bulbs, it's no good. So Henry and I, we mounted a light to the roof. We kind of hung it above the two sides of the characters, and we put the camera straight in the middle, but we wanted to kind of have a split lighting situation with different coloured lights on either side of each of the characters. And so what we did was we bracketed the shot. So we tried to, you know, multiple exposures to try and bring both those colours in there and get the exposure right and get the colours and the light looking good on these characters who are in not the most amazing situation for lighting in an environment that kind of sucks light and is very big and open.
Jack was really keen on the handheld indie look as well. So that was super informed by the Easy Rig, which is basically this unit that you strap to yourself and clip onto the camera and it can just float in front of you and hold it. We only had 3 or 4 lights. I did toy with just using all practical lights, leaving all of the fluorescent lights in the ceilings in the school rooms on just to get that even more indie, grungy look, but it was all just too bright and we weren't able to get enough contrast, which is why we ended up doing our own fixtures, like the light outside emulating a street lamp / moonlight, and then a couple inside that were punching in a bit of colour and also, yeah, a bit of fill light as well.
Costume design as well, that ended up being a lot more finicky than I thought. I mean, at times Jack can be a bit of a perfectionist, which I think we all know, but that's something that pays off in the project, you'll see. There was just a lot more detail that went into everything than I had initially expected.
I remember Jack and I went to a place on Canterbury Road that did like a bunch of different school uniforms, and we thought this would be perfect. You know, we'll find a blazer here for the boys, something that looked like a kind of preppy, classy school blazer that didn't already have an emblem on it. Wasn't really a thing.
I called a costume shop and the woman said to me, "We don't do them. It's a kind of a known thing that you can't get school uniform costumes because the intellectual property is protected. Nobody's going to farm out their school logos, and there's maybe there's a child protection element there as well." So I found a graphic designer and I had them design a logo for St Jude's. I asked some of the more religious affiliated members of the crew whether a red Jesus would be satanic and in fact offensive, and they answered that yes, in fact it would be highly offensive. So I think we went for a white Jesus instead. And then I had to find blazers that the emblem could be embroidered onto. And the problem here is that a school blazer is actually slightly different from a suit jacket that you would habitually wear to a wedding or work or whatever. They have a wider lapel, they've got like a wider sort of pocket area, and they're typically slightly oversized because they buy them and then the kids grow into them. What I ended up doing was going online and blind buying these navy jackets. By the time the jackets got there, I think we were 3-4 days out from production, and the time was a ticking, as they say. The first 7 or 8 embroidery businesses that I called essentially laughed at me. They said, "How many do you need done?" I said 3, and they said, "How quickly?" And I said, "Within the next day." And they said, "Both of those are impossible. We do bulk orders. We do hundreds at a time to make it worth our while to bring the production costs down. And you're looking at 6 weeks or whatever it was." I went, "Oh fuck, we're not going to have these costumes, and the whole film is going to look super cheap and tacky, and it's not going to be believable at all." I found a guy, a lovely gentleman in Campsie at the 11th hour. We had a discourse.
Can you just do 3 of them and get it done in the next 2 days? And he was like, "Oh, I don't know. And then eventually was like, "Yeah, all right."
He agreed to do it for, I think, what was pretty modest sum in the end, and he did it for me within 24 hours. So without that man, there is no costume. Dare I be as bold as to say there is no film.
What's her name again?
Jemima.
Yeah, Jemima, that's her name. Hey, Jemima, that's her name. And Amy, right? Amy, yeah, I like working with them. Good people, good actors, I'm telling you right now.
I think everyone was like quite excited to be there, and it was also quite a short shoot, so we knew that there was a lot that we had to kind of pack in.
It's the way he gets pops up and he kind of whacks on that. Yeah. Unreal.
And because we were on set, so the dressing room / green room was just another classroom. Like it was all a little bit, I don't know, it was like a bit meta. You were kind of in it the whole time.
The mood that was felt on set, because we were in such a tight time frame, was that there wasn't really any margin for error, to be honest.
Just a little bit here, okay? We're essentially going to get 2 real shots and a pickup of the board, okay, for your heels or wounds bit, Brady. But there's 2 proper shots we're getting here, okay? We're going to get the 3 shot from where Henry's sitting there across here, and that will be of the whole scene. So we need you 2 out there. You don't have to actually hit your head, but I need to see you come back into the room and scream, because I'm going to use the first half out the window from one take, and the second half from another take. So I need to have...
Jack is such a good director. I actually love Jack. Jack's he's really intelligent, the way, especially with his writing is really intelligent, and his wittiness on set just to come up with new things.
He's very full on, and he's very into the performances, especially the type of film it is. He's really heavy on the performance, so he's doing a really good job. He's keeping everyone's morale high, things like that, so I really like that. But he's doing a fantastic job, and I really like just the way he treats crew, cast, and everybody, and it's just a good environment.
My favourite thing that he does is anytime he wants to give you a note, he pulls you aside and says it so quietly so that he doesn't embarrass you, even if the note is something like, "Can you speak a little louder?" or something like that. He'll always pull you aside and be like, can you just speak?
Let's fractionally more uncomfortable when she starts touching your head.
Okay.
He likes to be obscure and ridiculous, but also has a deeper meaning to all that obscurity and ridiculousness. I think a lot of the jokes he makes are hilarious, but there's also an undertone of truth to everything that he does.
It's 1:30 in the morning. I think we'll be wrapped by 2:30, and then we'll bump out and we'll leave at 3. I'm high energy. I feel high octane. I feel good. I feel great.
The number one thing that we needed on set was ticker. Was just people who were happy to dig in and pull the cap over the eyes and get it done. There's times where you do naturally at 2:30 in the morning feel the energy start to flatten, and it's your responsibility to, without being too Churchillian and standing up on desks and giving speeches, which you once or twice you have to do, to find ways to tap into everyone's psyche and bring them together and bring everyone up.
I'm happy as Larry in that kind of environment, you know what I mean? Sometimes I'll catch myself just sort of smiling, looking at cables taped to the wall, thinking this is where I am. Doing night shoots, people have sort of lived full days before they've come in to do the night shoots, and so there was a little bit of delirium that sort of set in there towards the end as well. But I also think that delirium led us to places that have ended up in the film that are very interesting.
Since Henry throws me this Bob Marley wig that is quite passé and from a different era, a different time in comedy, I'm feeling good.
My Uso.
Oh my god.
Tell us about yourself. Anything.
I'm 7'4". I'm really good looking. 90 kgs, lean.
Probably one of the best sets I've ever worked on. Mainly because it's really special when you find a cast and a crew that's all on the same page, and everyone is working towards a similar goal, and everyone's there for art, for that, and everyone got along. Everyone was there. No one was complaining. Everyone was just kind of working on this one piece.
It was a faster pace than I was expecting. I think a lot of the times we would do like 1 or 2 takes and that was it. So it was like you really had to be on your stuff. The crew was so fun and everyone was genuinely having a good time, and you know, like you'd be doing something and you could see someone trying not to laugh in the back, and I think that helps in the same way that a theatre audience does. It was this short amount of time and everyone's there doing the same thing and trying to achieve the same thing. It didn't lose its fun.
Oh, you see that? Clean. See that?
Happy birthday, dear Benny. Happy birthday to you. Hooray! Hooray! Hooray!
Put it on. Oh, he's taking it off so soon.
Got involved with the project, I like to think kind of by accident, because there'd never been any talk of me doing any music for this film. I knew Jack was filming it, I knew he was making the movie, but when he finished the photography and had like a really rough cut of the film, he sent it to me to watch, and I loved it straight away. I'd previously done the music for one of Jack's plays, Unperturbed. And I'd really enjoyed doing it. It was the first sort of time I'd put music to a play or anything that wasn't music for music's sake. I mentioned that, it'd be cool to do a bit of music for this, and then I ended up sort of offering to do all the music for the film, and I'm really glad I did. We didn't really know where to start, so we borrowed a MIDI keyboard off Jack's dad. We had a 24-hour journey from Australia to the UK, and we basically sat down on the plane, plugged the keyboard in, and started just playing some music over the rough cut of the film and just seeing what worked, seeing what didn't.
That's your son, isn't it?
What are we thinking about the major chord there?
It's a change.
We're never going to be going into a studio with a symphony orchestra. We're never going to be hiring a million musicians to play for the score. So it's what could we do with what we had? Most of the instruments are MIDI, apart from some guitar that I'm playing and some hand clap percussion things that I recorded myself. But yeah, we did a first draft on a flight, and spent the next couple of weeks refining it. I flew to Australia start of April, and we spent 3 weeks making the music for the film. So I'd already written a few themes for certain characters and certain scenes. We had a bit of space between writing those original themes and coming back to sit down and do the whole writing process for the film, which was good actually. We did quite a lot of work in a short amount of time last October. So when I came out in April, I had a clearer mind and I could be more decisive of what was a good idea and what we should stick with or what we should get rid of and start new. Myself and Jack were watching a few films when I first got out here, coming of age type films, and there was like a certain nostalgia about having 80s synthesizers and more electronic sounds. So we sort of changed direction completely, but we kept a lot of the themes, but we just changed the instruments. So the main group of instruments is like a tape piano, and there's synthesizers in there, there's some big synth bass. Also the clock is used throughout the film as an instrument. We're using the speed of the clock and the volume of the clock and how intense the reverb is on the clock. We're using all of those elements to create like a sense of urgency, or then to slow down certain scenes. If you're listening to the score, you'll often hear the clock will be like a metronome, and sometimes it might be slower than 60 BPM, it might be 50, or sometimes it might be faster, it might be at 70 BPM. And we've been trying to use that as the main instrument in the film.
That's your son, isn't it?
Too much.
We had to get rid of a lot of stuff because the immediate thing that you want to do is put music over everything, but that's not the case. You shouldn't really notice the music. The music should be there to support what the characters are trying to say or what the mood is. When it comes to film scores that we've both listened to, oftentimes there'll be music on an action sequence or a shot where there's no dialogue, and there is space for the music to breathe. But in the prep room, it's essentially a play. The entire film is dialogue. The hardest part was trying to make sure that the music didn't obstruct the dialogue or wasn't getting in the way. There's one scene in the whole film where there isn't any dialogue, which is our action scene. So the scene I'm watching now is the action scene, which is the only scene in the film that doesn't have any dialogue. I wanted to try and keep the instrumentation for this scene within the realms of what the rest of the film is using. So throughout the film you'll hear this big 808 bass, which is used in a variety of contexts. What I've done now is because the next scene goes into an EDM type beat, I've introduced the hi-hats so that there's the transition between the two scenes is a little bit smoother. And now for this scene, when they're sniffing the jungle juice.
What's this? Jungle juice.
I just thought like there's a bit of a...
Drink it. Sniff it,
It's like a sort of a house party type thing that's going on. She's opening herself up for the first time
to change shape.
The rest of the characters in this room.
She gave you an alibi.
That feels weird.
What does?
Now, on the word alibi, the music's
nice.
The music's changed now, and
Painful
there's
way.
a sort of hint that the two girls are now friends. For the first time,
The
they're
less
not
they
at each
talk,
other's throats, and they're actually trying
the
to
less
help
it
each other, I
means,
think, emotionally.
The less I care, the less it hurts. Besides, people can't.
We've changed key
listen
now
for
as well.
long
We
as
were
they
in
can talk.
A minor, and now
they have
we're
to
more
start
in
talking.
a sort of C
You might as well
major.
just talk to yourself.
I'm confident that I've done the best job I can with the film, and I hope I've done the writing justice. But again, it's a learning curve.
this is the first of many, hopefully. And yeah, we'll see what people think.
A lot of people have said to me, hey, when are we going to see that film? And often my answer is, well, you might not, you know. And that's not to say that we won't finish it. The intention was always to finish it. But for me, this whole project was about teaching myself and the team around me, how do we make a feature film from start to finish? So if anything happens to the film from now, if it goes out and we do get a little bit of distribution, whatever, that's all a bonus. It was the actual process of making this thing and then learning how to make it. We're going to keep making things, we're going to keep making films, I'm going to keep writing plays. The next film I'm hoping will be outside of a single room, just to keep making things at this independent level and not waiting for permission to make things, not waiting for someone to give me $1 million to make a movie. Hopefully those larger opportunities present themselves, but I'm not going to go, well, we made the prep room, now I'll wait for someone to see how marvellous I am, and hopefully they will give me the resources to make the next thing. It may be Project 7 that someone comes along with some funding. Something that I know now at 27 that I maybe wasn't totally cognizant of at 22, 23, 24, is that the evidence that you can do the thing comes from doing the thing. It's not there originally to begin with. So you have to con yourself at the start into believing that you can materialize this thing, you can make it happen. And then the next time you go to do a thing, you look back and you go, well, I did that thing already. So maybe if I did that thing, maybe I can do another thing. But you have to do it. If I don't do the thing, it won't happen. If you don't write the page, then you're a page away. Nothing moves forward out of luck, and nothing moves forward out of chance, and it doesn't move forward on its own. The momentum of the thing comes from your exertion. It's like you're standing at the bottom of a hill and there's a boulder there, and that boulder will not move unless you put your shoulder behind it. And you have to push really, really hard. And every time you step away, the boulder's not necessarily going to roll back down the hill, but it's not going any further up it. The way to get things made, I think, is just to make them, to figure out a way to make them.
Okay. Now, everyone take like a whole step in.
Yeah, easy. Let's do a take, guys. That's a wrap.